the papers are reporting across the country from the various situations, ranging from flood to some other concerns. But would like to begin with the flood situation, as the Punch newspaper talks about the flood that's been going on in the country and its aftermath. Of course, you would recall that NIMET had predicted flooding in 32 states in the country. And of course, the Punch leads with the headline, Lagos, Edo, Akwa Ibom, Ebonyi plan camps for flood victims, with the rider put measures in place for security. Sokoto Delta to relocate residents from flood-prone areas. And of course, NEMA, mom as flood ravages states. And if we look further, it's the same thing. You have the flood situation with the nation capturing the same flood issue with the headline, Anxiety in States as Rainfall intensifies. The issue of rain has been something that we've been seeing recently, and of course these two papers are heavy about it. I'm talking about the nation. Now we have our newspaper reviewer here who will be telling us about what these papers will make sense of this particular newspapers. Join us as we welcome the State Director for the Center for Human Rights and Accountability Network, Otwekong Franklin Isong. Good morning to you, Mr. Otwekong.
Good morning, Ike. Good morning. Good to be with you. Good morning, Jennifer.
Good morning. It's good to have you on the show.
So cute this morning.
Thank you.
Otwekong, let's delve straight into what the papers are reporting, because you have a similar situation also repeated across other papers. But I'd like to get your thoughts on this flood situation, because you have seen the rainfalls recently. You saw videos and reports from Lagos State, that 10-hour rainfall that saw a lot of buildings submerged and properties even destroyed, although no casualty has been reported at the moment. But this flood situation with NIMET's prediction, what's your thought about it? You think states were really prepared for it, even after NIMET's prediction?
First of all, it's worrisome. You said no casualty, but we had a casualty in Akwa Ibom when the owner of a building was submerged in a very terrible flood. And I think the government had to immediately rush in and try to see how to relocate the other tenant in the premises. I think flood has been a recurrent decimal in Nigeria. I would have thought that state government, haven't been given alert by NEMET that it will happen, would have had enough opportunity to prepare and plan for how to mitigate the hardship that will be faced. What we are seeing in pictures we are seeing and videos we are seeing and reports we are getting across the country is really worrisome. And I think that there is need for state government to be proactive. You don't be reactional. You don't be reactive in your approach to issues of life, such as flood. Because when it happens, you don't know when the rain will descend. It could be at the midnight, it could be the 8 hours of the morning. So I think that government would have been more proactive than what we are getting today. But however, I think that government should start taking steps to addressing the matter.
Well, do you think it's just the government? Because now from analysis of the situations across states, even in Akwa Ibom, some of these cases are man-made situations. The government doesn't live in our neighborhood. The government aren't the ones who bear the brunt of the flood issues. So what then do you think? Is it just government who should come in, or the people themselves have to take responsibility?
You're looking at the causes now.
Yes.
We are now looking at the incident, the occurrence of the incident, not the causes. If you want to go through the causes, there are so many issues that we looked at. First off, when these houses, or when these, let's even look at the houses in this case, were built, were they given approvals? Because there are certain government agencies that auto-regulate structures. When people are building on illegal, or affecting the waterways and drainages, what was the approach that the government took to addressing these issues? That's one. Secondly, when the gutters have been blocked, what was the relevant government agency doing to evacuate and distill the gutters? That's two. Then you now look at the people themselves who will go about, causing causing the obstacle, like throwing garbage in the gutters and drainages. But that is what now we are saying. We are looking at the causes again, because we are now inside the incident. What is the next thing we should do? First off, is for government, like I've seen a report where some state government are planning to evacuate persons who will be affected to a different area and build camps and tent and the rest. Fine. But then, like I'm seeing in Lagos state government, the Ministry of Environment is, trying to give permanent structure, permanent solution to it. You have an agency that will be going around, like task force, to check. Because even when you evacuate these people and put them in IDPs camps, the issue has not been addressed. Like what happened in Akwa Ibom, for instance, you can even see that the building that was submerged by the flood was even below the highway. The structures were below the highway, so all the water that runs on the highway descend and the flood and then fill the building. And before now, those in the neighborhood had been raising issues, complaining that these structures were built illegally. That's 1, 2, and that those who did the road ought to have demolished these buildings, but they allowed this building to be there, whereas they have, they do the road. So what we are saying now is not the causes, but how do we mitigate the hardship that will come out of the flood?
There is also a concern that's captured by the Punch with the rider there. You've talked about measures being put in place, the relocation of affected persons. But it says here, with the writer from Punch, that NEMA stays mum on this flood situation in 10 states. Is it that NEMA is not doing enough to sensitize the people, having given the prediction that 32 states will be affected by heavy rainfall this year?
I wouldn't think so. I would rather think that every state has Minister of Environment. Every state should be able to have, agency to handle emergencies. You don't rely on what the federal government will do. You are a state government. You are closer to people at your own state. So even when you've gotten that information that there will be flood in your state, you would have put a committee in place to be able to work out. Like in Akwa Ibom State, you would have had a committee that will be able to look at the NEMET alert had point out that there will be flood in Ibno, there will be flood in Mbo, Mbarene, Isiloboro, Exeleket, and these areas are in the coastal community. So what the government ought to have done would have been to move into action and begin to meet with stakeholders, create awareness, sensitize the community, and then get them aware and prepare for it, that there is going to be flood based on the alert. But most government do not even act. They will just keep quiet and wait until it happens, which is why you have several casualties in most cases.
All right, that's the flood situation, which is predominantly characterizing the headlines from The Nation and The Punch as we see it. It's a major concern for a lot of state governments. It's precisely the Lagos state government that is battling the aftermath of that downpour, which lasted for 10 hours, and we saw the disruption of commercial activities and the damaging of properties there. But some other headlines of note, I'll take you to The Nation as it talks the same thing, but we'll just talk briefly about a concern from this same flood matter. The Nation reports flood anxiety in states as rainfall intensifies. Let's talk about preparedness here, because it's not enough for states to be anxious about the rains as they come. These things are given. You cannot stop nature. But our preparedness is a concern. You think states are doing enough, prepare for the rains even before they come, put machineries in place, work with emergency agencies to mitigate the effects of, the downpour?
I don't think they are doing enough. That's my sincere opinion. I stand corrected. I would have thought that the moment NIMET came out with this alert, much earlier enough that these states are going to be witnessing flood. By now, like I said earlier, by now we will be having jingles. By now we'll be having jingles on radio stations, television stations running. By now you will be having the government relevant agency moving into these areas, distilling of gutters, evacuation of waste, and ensuring that you keep your environment clean. But I don't see this. I don't see much actions. All I just see is maybe some state government could have been like doubting Thomases who want to wait and see if actually it will happen. Some could even doubt the alerts. Some could even play politics with it and say, why should our state be part of? Just like when we had COVID-19, when a state is named, that somebody in the state has been caught with COVID-19, some government came out to debunk. They saw it like being politicizing the entire issue instead of looking at the fact and looking at how to mitigate the challenges. So I would have thought that the government of the states so named by name that they would experience flood would have taken proactive actions. Like I have said earlier, put up committees in place. The one committee that will handle emergency relief materials, committee that will go about like task force, ensuring that you check your drainages, your garbage system, and keep your areas clean, and then move into the community so named to be affected and create awareness. Meet with stakeholders. They will use town criers and be informing people that look, be expecting that this thing could happen, and in the event that it happens, these are the muster point. People should relocate from here to these areas. I can bet you now, if you move to these states that have been so named, you won't see any muster point. It is now that government has said we will relocate them. It is now within the act that we have now fallen into the disaster. Government is now talking about we will relocate, but now we've already had people have already lost their properties, lost their means of livelihood, and like I saw videos in some states, you see some vehicles have been submerged. And this is not a nice one. And don't forget that the Niger Delta region is a coastal community surrounded by ocean.
Yes.
And every little flood you have, here we will have more. Like what you see in Bayelsa, Akwa Ibom, Delta, Edo, rivers, cross river, because we are in the riverine community. And so we are likely to be worse affected by flood than every other states.
Yeah, you should also add Kogi State.
Kogi State, yeah.
They've been badly affected.